Let us now talk about singular and plural verbs. We would also talk about present tense and past tense helping verbs. But first, singular and plural verbs. Now let me ask you a question. How do we identify that this verb is singular and that this is plural? So it's important for us to know what singular and plural verbs are. A singular verb is a verb that ends with an S. A verb that ends with what? An S. You can say that. So if you give example of a verb and then you spell it, then the spelling ends with S. That verb is a singular verb. Example, when I say comes, the spelling is C-O-M-E-S. Alright? So it's singular because it ends with an S. Goes, G-O-E-S. It ends with an S. It's singular also. What about cooks? Drives, swims, flies, runs, picks, makes, and many more. Now, in each of these words I pronounced, you would notice that they all end with an S. Therefore, they are singular verbs. The examples I mentioned are singular lexical verbs. That is singular main verbs. Those that show action. What about examples of singular helping verbs? That is singular auxiliary verbs. Is a singular auxiliary verb. Was is a singular auxiliary verb. Has is a singular auxiliary verb. You can see them on the board here. Once again, these are singular verbs because they end with what? An S. So don't forget, a singular verb is a verb that takes S at the end. It ends with an S. So that's how we identify them, okay? Now let us talk about plural verbs now. So plural verbs are those that do not end with an S. They don't end with S, okay? So we call them plural verbs. So we can think of examples of plural lexical verbs, plural main verbs. We can also think of examples of plural helping verbs. On the board here we have the examples of plural main verbs: come, go, cook, fly, stand, live, make, and many more. Now look at these examples here. The words I spelled, none of them end with an S. None of them end with an S. So it shows that they are plural. So these are some examples of plural main verbs. That is plural lexical verbs. There are still many more of them. Drive, sleep, run. Okay? So they do not take S at the end. Let us look at some examples of plural helping verbs. That is plural auxiliary verbs. Now when you're talking about plural helping verbs, please let me say this. It is primary auxiliary verbs that usually have plural form, singular form when you are talking about auxiliary verbs. When you come to modal auxiliary, we don't talk about singular or plural modal auxiliary verbs. Please take note. Because when you use them in a sentence, they can either go with singular subject or plural subject of a sentence. Is that okay? So we cannot really refer to modal auxiliary verb as being singular or being plural. Is that okay? So when you hear about singular or plural auxiliary verb, usually our interest is primary auxiliary verb. So examples of plural helping verbs are were, have. These are primary auxiliary verbs that are plural. I hope you understand what I just explained. So as a summary, singular verbs, they take S at the end. Your spelling ends with what? An S. Plural verbs, their spelling do not end with S. Let us now conclude with present and past tense helping verbs. So when you come to helping verbs, primary auxiliary verbs, modal auxiliary verbs, there are those that are present tense. There are those that are past tense. So we have this table that shows examples. Present tense, is, am. They are examples of present tense auxiliary verbs. Now, what is the past tense of is and am? Is, am. What are the past tense? The past tense is was. Then we have are. Are is a present tense auxiliary verb. What is the past tense of are? Were. Were is the past tense. Has and have are present tense auxiliary verb. That's present tense helping verb. What is their past tense? Had. Had is the past tense of has and have. Just like was is the past tense of is and am. Okay, we move on. Will is present tense modal auxiliary verb. The past tense of will is would. Would. Can is present tense. Past tense of can is could. Shall is present tense. Past tense of shall is should. Alright, now an assignment will be given to you. In the assignment, we are going to make sentences, okay? In each of the sentences, you will be expected to underline the example of verb that you have in the sentence. Part of the assignment will also take the question where you are to indicate by underlining the primary auxiliary verb and the modal auxiliary verb. Then you are to indicate those that are present tense and those that are past tense in the sentence.